The MP5, a beautifully made machine gun by Heckler & Koch, built in the 60s for police departments and special operations units across the world. There is so many variants of the MP5, it's quite hard to list them all, but one of the most recognizable ones is this one, the MP5SD. And this version of the Gelsoft SMG developed by Classic Army is what we're taking a look at today. How does this one compare to the other MP5s on the market like the LDT? Let's find out. Alright guys, look, today we're only going to be looking at the externals and the performance of this blaster. If you wanted more information about like the internal workings, what the gears look like, you know, how durable the gearbox is, then be sure to subscribe for us because, I mean, we'll be releasing that video in the next couple of weeks. Look, we'll start off with the construction material. This blaster is a full metal construction where it makes sense. So you're going to get a metal receiver, metal gearbox, metal gears. More importantly, there's a metal magazine as well. So you know that straight away that they're kind of building around the aspect of durability. It has a really quality firing feel, and we'll touch on that a bit more later. It's kind of subjective though. Look, you know, some people like that kind of, you know, really crisp feel of the LDT and stuff. I like a big chunky sort of firing pattern. This one kind of delivers on that. The lower, the buttstock and the handguard are all basically nylon and plastic. That obviously makes sense. That's what you're going to be finding on the real MP5SD. The suppressor, however, is a really beautifully machined piece of aluminum. And it has two pieces, obviously the front comes off. The combination of these materials really makes the weight of this entire blaster feel quite nicely balanced. So when you're sort of holding it, you don't really feel it tipping forward as you would on other blasters that have a really heavy suppressor on the front. So when you're holding it upright, it's obviously not going to be tipping out. The handguard is an authentic replica of the original. However, in the real steel version of this blaster, you'll find that this suppressor goes a fair bit way into the actual handguard itself. You're not really going to get that with this one here, just because obviously they don't need to. It's not actually suppressing anything. So it is what it is. This does actually free up quite a bit of real estate though for any potential upgrades if you wanted to do that. Obviously in the front handguard here, it's all dead air, so you can fill it out with an extra battery or front wire it if you're feeling adventurous. So one of the more interesting things though about this entire blaster is this suppressor. So there was quite a bit of thought, and there's actually quite an exciting bit of potential here for sort of upgrading the suppressor, adding sort of features to it. It's very easily detachable. You just saw me do it then. You kind of like quick twist it, and then you can just remove it from the handguard. You'll find that this barrel is about 3 centimeters sitting from the attachment plate. That really does give you quite a lot of space inside the suppressor here. Now this one doesn't have any foam inside. I do believe that there is an option to put foam in it if you wish. Let's see if I can get that on the camera. So it is a completely dead internal. You can extend the barrel out if you wanted and add a hop up. It would take a bit of fiddling, but it would definitely be possible. So you could build like, you know, a tuned up MP5 with a suppressor and a hop up and all that kind of fun stuff without actually having to make any sort of changes to the external looks of it. The biggest point of difference is, like in features compared this to the other MP5s that are on the market like the LDT, is the mags. So the LDT magazines do have a bit of a history of sort of jamming up, not really being designed for Gelsoft, and you'll find that the gels sort of were getting stuck in kind of like the feeding tray. The Classic Army ones, on the other hand, I've personally dumped about 10 mags through this one. It does have a steeper angle in the tray, so it does seem to not jam up anywhere near as much. However, that's obviously up for debate. Hopefully someone like Lo Guido could have a look at it and, you know, try to figure out what the main differences are between this one and the LDT mags. Other than that though, like I said before, I've dumped 10 mags back to back on this blaster and there was no problems. They had one small jam, but you kind of get that with any blaster. So, I mean, like, these are pretty good compared to those LDT mags, as an LDT owner myself, so. The selector plate, the trigger selector, has 3 options. So you've got safe, semi, and full auto. The positioning of these notches is a little bit weird. I assume that that's how they are in the real versions. However, one thing I did notice with this particular blaster is that the selector sort of clicking is very marshmallowy. You can kind of feel like it's a bit tough to feel like you've hit the correct mode switch, and if it sort of slipped out, you would barely notice it. So the trigger's good though. With an acceptable travel range, the responsiveness is quite nice as well. It's not as good as what you'd get out of a MOSFET or, you know, a speed trigger, but for a stock blaster, it's not bad. I quite like it. So the buttstock itself has quite a decent bit of room. You can easily fit a 10 centimeter battery in there. So easily, in fact, you can kind of hear it rattling when you shake it. Let me just demonstrate that. So let's put this back on, maybe. One day. There we go. So when you shake it, you can kind of hear it rattling. So maybe if you wanted to add some Velcro or something like that to keep the noise down, it'd be a good idea. Now, the part we've all sort of care about, the performance. This is kind of what impressed me most about this blaster. With an 11.1 volt battery, this MP5SD was doing a really consistent 300 FPS, and its sort of rounds per second range was around about 14 to 17 rounds per second. For such a short barrel on this blaster, that is actually exceptionally good. It was kind of the reliability that impressed me most though when I was sort of using this blaster. Owning an LDT MP5, you know, myself, I find that like on a bad day when I go to use it, I can get maybe 2 mags. Before it sort of had some feeding issues, which you can imagine is kind of really frustrating. Not only does this like MP5SD feel really solid and dependable when you're using it, I've sort of spent a day shooting it and testing it and on the range, and 10 back-to-back mags, I had no real issues other than that one jam that I sort of encountered. The clustering, like the actual sort of spread of gels when I was firing, it was really good. However, obviously a hot up's going to improve that a little bit more, bring that sort of package in a little bit, because you do see the odd one sort of just curving out, but any blaster will have that sort of issue. One big concern I had was the space in the suppressor would cause gels to maybe get stuck. So when I was sort of firing it, obviously you've got to get the gels through that little sort of exit hole. But good news, when I was using it for the whole day, I don't think a single gel actually got stuck in the suppressor or bounced around or anything like that inside. So after a full day of firing and testing it, never collected anything other than a bit of mist and the occasional gel that probably exploded on exit, which is, awesome work, Classic Army. That's really dope to actually have a pretty decent working suppressor on a stock blaster. Upgrades. So some easy upgrades for this little beast is obviously like a barrel extension. You can add a hop up, as we discussed before. You could, add a Picatinny rail. You could remove the back iron sights. You could replace a reflex sight pretty easily. One thing that's kind of really cool about this blaster is that with the amount of real estate that you kind of have with the buttstock, the handguard, and the suppressor, there's a lot of potential there for sort of updating and upgrading stuff inside and sort of keeping the external shape of the entire blaster. So you have a lot of room for like sleeper builds. The full metal internals means you could, tweak the spring or the gearing to really sort of up the FPS on this little blaster. But overall, there's just so much potential with this one. Like, you could make huge amounts of changes. So what are our final thoughts on this one? It's a perfect blaster for those who want a really quality firing experience and the kind of reliability you get from a Classic Army blaster. The MP5SD is really iconic look, and the build quality means that there's like an abundance for improvement, and it's still going to look exactly like an MP5SD. The performance is superb. 300 FPS on the nose with really tight clustering on a tiny CQB is awesome. And I could really see myself playing like a few events with this one without constantly feeling like it's going to crap out on me. I would really recommend this one to anyone who has like an MP5 collection or wants a really authentic CQB blaster while still remaining reliable and just heaps of room for like upgrades, to your own tastes. All right, guys, that's all we've got time for today about this MP5SD. Stay tuned for the teardown video though, where we'll see what internals this blaster has, how it sort of operates, and what we can expect when we buy one. Look, thank you so much as always, guys, for supporting the channel and helping us out with subscribing. As Gilly always says, you stay fresh, you stay blasting, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye.
Give me your own catchphrase, bro.
Now I'll just piggyback off Gillies. It's easier.
Just get
Slip, slop, slap, these blasters are back.
Slip, slop, slap. These blasters are back. You've either just came up with that and it's brilliant, or you were holding on to that shit for weeks.
You just remember, you slip, slop, slap, these blasters are back.
say that again.
I'm not saying that. Jesus.
Look, I actually would.
Slip, slop, slap. These blasters are fat. Jesus.